Hi, I'm Mash Bonigala, brand strategist at Spellbrand. Okay, one of the best things you can do for your business to take your brand to the next level, in fact, take your brand away from a red ocean full of, competition, price cutting, and all that, to a blue ocean where you create value for your customers and, of course, you reap the rewards of that without any kind of competition. To do that, one of the best things you can do is to really question the kind of industry standards, assumptions, and the status quo. So, taking a deep, hard look at your industry, checking to see what the competition, the benchmark competition, which is, of course, the leaders, right? The leaders of the market segment, what they're doing in terms of how they are performing on a set of criteria, taking a look at the middle section, or rather the average kind of business in that particular market, and then seeing where you are and how you can make some changes so that you sort of move away from that competition is the topic of this video today. So now, if you look at any market segment, your own market segment, for example, I can guarantee you that there are lots of things that you take for granted as a part of that industry, right? It could be industry assumptions. There's certain way of doing things. There's certain offers. There's certain pricing structures. There's certain delivery mechanisms. There is certain maintenance way of doing things for products after sales, and so on and so forth. So all these are industry assumptions, and these assumptions may have been laid down by the pioneers. So when the industry started and it was picking up, you had pioneers. Okay, let's just to step back a little bit. In any given industry, you have the pioneers, then you have the settlers, right? So the pioneers are the new entrants into a new market segment. They sort of build the infrastructure, they grow that market segment, that industry. And then, of course, over a period of time, they become kind of settlers, right? So the benchmarks may be set by those bigger brands, now the older brands, and yet you sort of, take those as the kind of industry benchmark or assumption, and you carry on doing the things as they're supposed to be. In fact, industry best practices is a big concept in management, in marketing, in MBAs, and there are certifications. There's companies that actually help businesses, maintain industry best practices and so on and so forth. Now, industry best practices are a good thing. I'm not saying that they're terrible, but what I am saying though is that you need to question these practices, right? You cannot simply just follow them. Now, these best practices sometimes may be awesome for the bigger brands, right? Bigger brands with a lot more capital than you, a lot more resources and legacy, history. If you are a small company, if you are a one-person business operating in a bigger kind of market segment, then those same practices might not be effective. And also, if everyone is following the industry best practices, the benchmarks, the way of doing things, then there is no innovation, right? And you would be operating within that competitive red ocean. Now, to move away from that, to differentiate yourself, to distance yourself from this cesspool of competition, you will have to sort of question your industry assumptions. Now, I know I keep talking about industry assumptions and all that. Let's look at an example of a industry segment, the players, the big players, the key players, the average players, and a new entrant who came in and came up with a strategy to move away from the competition and to create a blue ocean within that market segment. All right, so let's take a quick look. Now, this is an image This is a graph that shows a market segment, and this is the charity funding market segment, right? So you can see the black dots connected by solid lines are the traditional large fundraising charities, right? These are the big charity organizations. And then you have the small fundraising charities represented by the dotted line. On the left-hand side, you have the offering level. So you have the low and the high. This is the x-axis. And on the y-axis, the horizontal axis, you have certain criteria. Now, every industry has certain criteria on which companies compete on, right? And one of the things usually is price. Of course, these are charities, so you don't see price as one of the things that they're competing on. But imagine other industries, right? Cell phones, for example. All cell phone manufacturers, all brands, they compete on price. Of course, price, and then of course features and ease of use, and just like that. If you take a look at this graph, you see that there's pity please. So you might have seen these adverts on television where they show, I don't know, orphans or little children who are malnourished, nourished and are hungry and all that. And there's a voiceover, possibly by a celebrity, saying that so and so hasn't had a meal in days, and your $1 or $2 or whatever it is, or £1 or £2 would give them a meal. So please donate. So that is pity please. Then you have advocacy, counseling, care services. And these are charities, things that charities do. There is soliciting and managing grants. There's fundraising costs, year-round events and activities, credibility through corporate sponsorships, transparency of operations, recognition of donations, and every pound or dollar that goes to the cause. So these are the things that charities compete on. Okay, let's look at the traditional large fundraising charities, right? These are the big ones that they are, nationwide or sometimes worldwide. On pity please, they're way up there. So they have a lot of pity please going on. And so are the small fundraising charities. Okay, advocacy, counseling, care services. Traditional large fundraising charities, yes, they are up there. Small, medium, because it does take a lot of effort, resources, and all that. Soliciting and managing grants, the same thing. Fundraising costs, the same thing. Now, you will notice that the pattern that the big charities follow, right, on different of these criteria, the small ones also follow in a similar way. So you have a similar looking graph for both of them. Now, what that means is they're all operating under similar kind of criteria. It's just that the big ones, they're the benchmark. They set the benchmarks because they have the money, the clout, the credibility, the resources, and so their offerings, everything they do is at the high level. And the smaller firms are trying to catch up, and if they can, they do. If not, like for example, this recognition of donations, they cross over. They actually more sometimes, and transparency of operation, they try to match, and so on and so forth. Now, this is how the UK charity landscape or industry was before Comic Relief came along. So Comic Relief, a new entrant, a pioneer into the market, and they looked at this and thought, well, we cannot really compete with all these traditional large fundraising charities, right? We cannot do the pity please, we cannot do the advocacy thing, and we don't want to have huge fundraising costs. And we can't also compete with the small fundraising charities because it's highly competitive, right? So we will have to be scrambling around and, struggling. So what did they do? This is what they did. And you can see the new line, right? Sorry, it's all black and white, so it's a little confusing, but it's a thicker line. The thicker line is the Red Nose Day or the Comic Relief, right? So what did they do? Pity please, nothing. They did not have a single advert showing orphans or poor people or, whatever. Nothing. Advocacy, counseling, care services? No, they don't want to do that. Soliciting and managing grants? No grants whatsoever. Fundraising costs? As you can see, compared to the traditional large fundraising charities and the small ones, very low. Year-round events and activities? No, actually they don't have events and activities around. They have one activity that comes every 2 years. Fundraising costs are low. Credibility through corporate sponsorships? Yes, as you can see, that's even more than the traditional big ones. So what they did, they came up with this idea of the Red Nose Day. They said comic relief, being funny for money. That was their motto. So they roped in big name comedians and celebrities, and they said, listen guys, here is a charity that almost 100% of the money would go towards, and then they had a list of causes and all that. And they said, we want you to donate a little bit of your time and your celebrity status and just do a little bit of comedy, right? And whatever proceeds that come from that, go. And that was such an awesome, innovative, new way of doing it. And how did they get that? By questioning the kind of industry assumptions. The industry assumption was that everyone needed to have pity please, right? But they said, why? Why should we have pity please? Why should we have adverts showing poor kids or malnutrition kids and asking for money? Because the audience, the general public, is becoming insensitive to that, right? That they're getting desensitized. In fact, when the advert comes, they're shifting channels. They're just switching channels and they're getting upset. So why? So by asking themselves, they said, okay, what about advocacy? Do we need advocacy? No. What about grants? Forget grants. What we want to do is really help certain causes directly. The money goes there, right? So by questioning the industry kind of assumptions and the best practices, they came up with solutions that actually put them on a path towards a blue ocean. And as you can see here, their graph, right, is completely different from the other competitors. So they have no competitors. And look what's happening, the consistency. So transparency operations, it's way out there. Recognition because of the celebrity status. Every pound to the cause, yes, because their costs were so low, right? Interaction and participation. People were participating. So they came up with a red nose, right? Almost all the stores around the country, the supermarkets, everything had these little red noses, foams, right? For sale for £1, £2, I think, £1. And people would just buy that because they know that the pound goes to the charity, and they just put it on their nose, walk around. It's funny, it's their bit. This is participation, word of mouth. So without spending any money on advertising, this comic relief or Red Nose Day became so popular. Everyone, in fact, the people look forward to that. They buy red noses, they buy for themselves, they buy for their kids or whatever, and they're walking around with the red nose, all that money to charity. Amount spent on advertisement, nothing. Celebrity driven glamour and popularity, fun and mayhem. It is fun. Instead of showing miserable, yes, people understand that there are starving kids in the world. There's poor people, there's old people without, homes, whatever. People know that. There's no need to rub it in their faces. So what they did, they turned it into fun. Funny skits, musicals, things like that. Because people know they're enjoying themselves, but they are giving back, participation. And symbol of belonging. People, with the other charities, it sort of tried to play on your guilt conscience and made you feel bad, right? But this one, symbol of belonging. People loved it. They wanted to be a part of that, right? So this is how sort of by questioning industry standards and by questioning best practices, you can then sort of move away from how the industry is doing things and come up with innovative ways of delivering your product, making profit. And that way you have no competition. Of course, maybe down the line people might follow, but if you create an iconic thing like this one, for example, they have a Red Nose Day. I don't think anyone will come along and say, okay, we're going to come up with a Blue Nose Day. It's not going to work, right? So yeah, you shouldn't be afraid to do that. Let's look at another example. All right, so let's look at Cirque du Soleil, right? It's a circus company. You probably heard of it. And this is the kind of canvas, the strategy canvas of the circus industry, entertainment industry. Okay, on the left hand side again, on the x-axis, you have offering level, low, high. And on the horizontal axis, the y-axis, you have the different criteria or factors that brands in that industry compete on. And as you can see, on the left hand side, it starts with the price, because these are for profit. These are not charities, right? So price, they're competing on price. And this is the price, and this is from a buyer's perspective. Okay, look at it from a buyer's perspective, not business perspective. When it says price here, this is the price people are paying for the service. Now, we got here, the red solid dot is Ringling Brothers, right? It's the key at one time, or even now I think, or maybe at one time they were the biggest kind of circus in the world, the big players. And then you have the kind of circles, empty circles with dotted lines, and those are the smaller regional circuses. And the blue one is Cirque du Soleil. Okay, before we get to the blue one, let's just look at the factors on which these old like Ringling Brothers and the other regional circuses were competing on. Price, star performers, right? So you can see that Ringling Brothers had high level of star performance. They were spending so much money on getting star performance. And the smaller regional circuses, not so much, because they don't have the money. The same thing, animal shows. Ringling Brothers had animal shows. Smaller ones, whatever they can do. Aisle concessions, multiple show arenas, right? Fun and humor, thrills and danger, unique venues, themes, and so on. Now you can see that Ringling Brothers and the smaller regional circuses, they follow the same kind of graph, right? Just at different levels, because the solid ones, as I said before, are the industry leaders. So they're setting the benchmark. And these guys are trying to catch up and do whatever best they can. But look at Cirque du Soleil. It came along and said, no, we don't want to compete with the Ringling Brothers. We don't have that clout, we don't have that money, we don't have the legacy, the history. And we don't want to compete with the smaller regional circuses because they're making no profit, right? It's a bad business to be in. So what do? They were questioning the criteria. They said, price. Why should the price be low? Well, people are not going to pay for high tickets, right? So people are not going to pay high ticket prices. But they were not willing to pay high ticket prices because all the competition was fighting price wars. So they were trying to do one better than the other by offering lower prices. So the public was used to paying low prices. The industry leaders and even the competitors, they demeaned the industry. Okay, what about, so this guy said, actually let's have high prices and deliver high value, right? Okay. Star performance. They said we don't need star performance. Okay. Animal shows, none so whatever, right? No animals. Aisle concessions, no. Multiple show areas, no. Fun and humor, yes. But you will notice not as high as that. But that's okay because it's not always, and in fact, slapstick comedy and things like that, people were really, not really in the olden days when we didn't have media, movies and all that. People would go to the circus and then laugh their brains out, right? You had people, clowns falling, and then people were roaring with laughter. But people don't laugh like that anymore. Their sense of humor has changed. So, fun and humor in a different way. Thrills and danger also. Keep it, it doesn't matter. You don't need. But look where it shot up. Unique venue. Sorry, not unique venue. Unique venue, they didn't have any kind of unique venue. Theme. So they came up with themed kind of circus. So they got rid of animal shows and star performers, and they came up with a theme. Now these themes were unique, and you will notice the Ringling Brothers or the small regional circuses, they didn't have that, and they couldn't even have that. They couldn't match that. And refined viewing environment, nope, because Cirque du Soleil had like it was like theater meeting circus. So they had musicals, they had fine dancing, and then there was even vocals and gymnastics and aerobatics synchronized to music, all that. Multiple productions, yes. Artistic music and dance, yes. And you can see that the graph looks completely different from the competition. What does that mean? It means that Cirque du Soleil created its own blue ocean. It moved away. And look at the striking thing here, the price. The price they charged customers, the customers paid quite a lot. So it was a profitable business and they had no competition. And I don't think anytime soon, because I don't think anyone can enter that arena following their business model, because it will be a me too or a copycat. And being a me too or copycat would mean that they would not be able to command the same kind of interest level or profits and so on. So these two examples show you that you need to question your market segment. Question everything about the pricing structures. Forget what the big boys are charging. Forget what the average company is charging. Yes, you need to be aware of what the market will bear, but sometimes, like in Cirque du Soleil, you can actually crash that. If the market kind of assumption is that a pen can only be people will only buy a pen for maximum, I don't know, $10, right? Anything more, why would they buy it? Then do something like Mont Blanc did, right? Mont Blanc pens are $200, $300, $500, $600, $1,000 more, and they're limited editions. They're always in demand. So question that. Also, product offering services, right? Don't commoditize. Of course, if you're in a completely commoditized situation, there may not be much you can do unless you're innovative. But let's just assume, if you think of the commodity, there are things you can do to get out of that commodity kind of rut, right? Question the sales process. If everybody's selling in a certain way, question yourself, why? Can we offer it differently, right? Like Uber did. Travel, taxis, public transport. They said, why not? Let's get everyone who has a car to become a driver. So the delivery of the service, maintenance of the service, accessories, customer care, anything and everything, right? So you have these list of attributes on the y-axis and go through each one of them. So first, make a list of the attributes that all the companies in your market segment are competing on. What are they competing on? Price, definitely. If you're a for-profit company, then the first one is price. Then, I don't know, it could be ease of use. If it's cell phones, for example, screen size, battery, how long the battery lasts, the retina display, camera pixels, and all that, right? Then think, if everybody's competing on that, do the customers really care about that feature? Do they care about the camera going from, I don't know, 6 or 10 megapixels to 35, 40 megapixels? What is the difference? On that phone, when you take a picture and you're looking at it, does it really make a difference? Is there such a huge difference between 10 megapixel and 35, 40 megapixels, right? Should we use that as a differentiating factor? Instead, why don't we, it's like, eliminating, right? So you got to eliminate, you got to reduce things that people won't care about or might not know the difference, and then raise your game in things that others are ignoring that might be important to the customers. So think through and ask yourself questions, question the status quo, and you know what? You will start getting ideas, creative ideas on setting yourself on the path to the blue ocean. All right. Okay. So if you're doing that in your industry, if you need help, there's a link below in this description. Click on it, schedule a 1-hour video call with me directly, and I will analyze your market. And then we'll come up with that, and we'll plot everything, and we will discuss the ramifications, because you got to be careful. When you're plotting these out, you got to understand whether these are pain points or features and things that only the industry cares about, right? You might be nitpicking between a 25 megapixel camera and a 35 megapixel camera, whereas the customers don't really care, right? They want good pictures and that's it. So you got to be careful. let me help you with that. Let's get on a video call and we can discuss it. If not, if you just have questions on this topic, just leave them below and I will try and answer them. All right. I hope you found this video useful. It's a little theoretical, but very important, can help you a lot. And till my next video, take care.